go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us about your journey with dogs and what led you to your current program.
That's a pretty interesting and in-depth question there. So the my name is Juan Hernandez. I'm with Cariduro Kennels, and we breed CAFIB style Fila Brasileiros. How I got into, I'll go into how I got into this breed rather than how I got into dogs in general, because that's a much longer thing. I was started over 15 years ago, about maybe 18 years ago now. Started doing research into what protective breeds I could be getting for my next dog. I've worked with canines in the past in the military, so I was pretty confident that I'll be able to train pretty much any dog. Ended up with some type of, I want to call it like some type of band dog type deal that people were ranting and raving around at the time. It had zero drive for the work, and it turns out that I can't train just about any dog, right? So I started doing more research into instinctually protective breeds, and there's a lot of fluff about there. You get the Neos, you get the Rottweilers, and they really don't. No, they don't really protect the way that it's in the fairy tales that they tell about them. Again, with the Filas, started reading a lot into them. First kennel I walked into, no, not around any longer, but it was like a Schwitz mountain dog kennels. Had a lot of claims on there which couldn't possibly be true. Started reading more about the history, and then came across the Kafib style uh, dog, which is not only a type within the Filas, it's also it has its own standard and its own like breeding practices. So where the evaluations go, it's almost like the where the German Shepherds have the Schutzhund used to be, that they had to go through this evaluation in Germany in order to be able to be allowed to breed. And so that's what CAFIB is. It's a whole program on breeding and evaluations for breeding. So that was the term. Okay, so we're gonna put it together like this. Think about it like the American Akita and the Akita Inu, right? Where the Akita Inu is the original Akita, right? The real
Mm.
deal one, and then the American Akita came around. At first, they were making believe like it was the same dog, but after a while, nobody could make that claim anymore. They're obviously two different breeds of dogs, and they ended up breaking away and making the American Akita, leaving the Akita Inu as the original standard. Nothing to knock the American Akita. Love the American Akita. It's a great dog. In many ways, probably even superior to the Akita, but obviously just a different breed, right? And what they did with the Fila Brasileiro was going into the American markets, and people just wanting a bigger dog, adding colors like the color black. It was never an original color in the breed. So, and be a black being a dominant color, it has to be introduced. This is not something that would just spontaneously come up because it was in there in the ancestry. It has to be introduced in order for it to come out, right? At least one of the parents has to be black. The the So they started mixing in Great Danes and Neapolitan Mastiffs, not only to get the black color, but to get bigger dogs, and with less temperament, because they didn't want super sharp dogs that are out there just trying to attack everybody, any stranger that they see. So, especially when bringing them over here to the United States, people just want a big dopey dog that looks intimidating. Maybe has a nice story behind it in the history. So they took the history of the Trupio Brasileiro, and they put it on there with we'll just call them non-Kafib type dogs. Now,
Mhm.
those non-Kafib type dogs could be mixed with anything at this point, and they're constantly remixing them, and you'll get some really really mastiffy non-Kafib dogs, super mastiffy, and then you'll get some really tall Great Dane looking dogs. There's even some of them out there with Rottweiler markings, black and tan points. And so The CAFIB style holds true to the original standard of the breed. It doesn't deviate from that, and it's just a more strict breeding program type deal. When you're dealing with CAFIB, you go through the CAFIB evaluations. The judge says, "Okay, yes, we're rating this dog, a good, very good, optimum for structure and temperament, let's say," and he'll tell you, "Okay, this dog should be bred with, you know, a dog with more temperament or better structure because of this and this," and they break it down to a science, very detailed analysis that's done for those dogs. So that's the major difference. Obviously, it could be considered two different breeds, except the non-CAFIB dogs, you wouldn't even consider it a breed because there's so many different variations within the non-CAFIB style dogs.
And what does CAFIB stand for, real quick?
It's the club for the betterment and the preservation of the breed. It's a Brazilian term, so of course it's not going to translate with the same acronym, but it's the club for the betterment and preservation of the Fila Brasileiro breed.
Mm-hmm. And when did that officially come about?
That was in the 70s, and that's an interesting story too. If you want me to get into that, it'll take a couple
Yeah,
of minutes.
absolutely.
Okay, so
Yeah.
Paulo Santos Cruz is considered the father of the breed by anybody who owns a Fila, whether it's a non-CAFIB Fila or the CBKC type Filas or CAFIB Filas rather. And then he was a judge for what was then the BKC. He created a standard, not knowing anything of the breed. They asked him to write a standard based on, this one kennel, and within that one kennel, there was dogs of different uh, sizes, looks, types, and everything like that. So the standard that he put forth was a very broad and vague standard, which pretty much any Molliser type dog would fit into. He got enamored with the history of the breed, so he started, starting his own breeding program and started showing dogs underneath the BKC, which later became the CBKC, which is underneath the FCI umbrella. When people started coming up to him, be like, "Hey, this a different type of dog is in the interior of Brazil, the farms, where obviously where the fields were actually used to do the work, and that was in the interior in the farms." And he went over there, and he realized that in the farms there was a lot more consistency in type. And when you have consistency in type, that's when you actually have a breed, right? So he went back to the BKC and said, "You know what? We don't. The standard that I wrote up there is not correct. This is the actual correct standard." They said, "Okay, no problem. We'll go ahead and change it to the standard." And what happened was the other breeders of the non-CAFIB dogs as well, "If you're going to go ahead and change it, our dogs will no longer fit in that standard. So we're just going to pull our dogs out and form a dog club." They folded underneath the pressure, and they kept with the same standard. Paulo Santos Cruz, which is abbreviated to PSC, decided to go ahead and form a breed-specific club just for the Fila, just to retain the traditional original Fila Brasileiro with the farm working dogs, right? And so that's what he did. He went on and he started this club, and now has spread out. We have shows and analysis in many different countries now, and breeders in many different countries for CAFIB.
Yeah, that's awesome. Right. Can you kind of go into the history of the Fila Brasileiro and what was the makeup and the original DNAs that supposedly came out of the breed? And
right. So this happened so long ago, people can just speculate, right? I think they pretty much just looked at the dog and they're like, "Okay, it must be some kind of bloodhound," but obviously it's bigger than a bloodhound. And so it must have some mastiff in there. It's very tenacious. So let's say it has some bulldog in there. So that's what most people stated that it was, bloodhound, mastiff, and bulldog of some sort, in order to make these things. Now, there's other speculations. There's a lot of dogs from Portugal and from Spain, and those are the people that settled there in Brazil originally. So you have the Spanish Mastiffs, you have Alohan, like Spanish Alohan type dogs. There could be a variety of dogs that actually made up into the actual breed makeup, but since it was bred by farmers, and it was basically a dog that would be able to do multiple tasks, right? It wasn't just a bulldog. It wasn't just a driving dog. And it had to protect the farm as well. So it had to encompass many different jobs. And the Fila developed through that natural type of selection. The dogs that did the job would get fed, and the dogs that didn't just wouldn't, and they wouldn't make it to breed to the next cycle. So and it just went around. And for the interior of Brazil, where all the farms were and everything, people were just developing these dogs that just naturally came out that way. Percentage wise, how much it wasn't a structured type of breeding program back then. It was just saying, hey, will this dog work? If it does, let's breed it. And it just, the dogs that ended up being able to do the work were bred, and the lines got closer and closer. And so you got a lot more of a consistent dog. So the dogs were bred, and their jobs were, of course, guarding the farm areas, the estate area from intruders, but also from predators. They were used as hunting dogs. They used to hunt jaguars with them. And that people think that means that the dogs is, like the dog Argentino that's supposed to be goes around and kills mountain lions like it's running out of style. It's not like that. You would go there with a hunter with a pack of Filas, and more than likely that the jaguar will get treed up, or if they just so happen to catch it, there'll be a pack of them. And Filas are pack animals. They're not dog aggressive. You can have 50 or 100 of them together, and they're not going to fight. Males, females, it doesn't matter. They're very good with each other, and they work very well together as a pack. And that's even true for when they're doing just regular guardian type work. So they were doing with that. They were doing cattle drives with them, moving the cattle from one area to another, either to a different area of the field, or maybe even just bringing them to the slaughterhouse, right? So they're capable of doing a lot for a very big dog. And usually dogs of that size can't do that type of work or be all around type work like that. But they're very, very capable, and there's still farms in Brazil that still use them with cattle.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk about that first experiences with the Fila that you're first witnessing, and you just said, "Hey, this is for me," and what was the driving factor on your final decision?
Right. So you see the videos, and you hear people talking about, oh, they're, just insane. It would just attack anything, anybody that doesn't belong to the household, everything, right? So literally, you have to see it. You have to see it for yourself, and it's different when you see it. I call the dog like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde type dog. If it's a dog lives with you inside the house, it's just like a poodle, pretty much. It just lays around, just follows you around like a little puppy all day long. The moment it hears, sees, or smells somebody that's not from your house, it completely flips the script. And when you see that, when you first see that, it's scary. It's scary to see the dog. It just looks something like the dog just completely lost its mind. And it's not a structured type of attack, where you can hold the dog back. This dog will go through anything that it could to get that person, that it believes is trespassing on its property. Had dogs go through second story windows, heard stories, dogs eating through walls, the sheetrock walls, obviously not cement walls, but, they just go out of their way to try to get what they perceive as a threat. And they just view everybody as a threat. And it's just a really, really high in defense drive. The word that the Brazilians use is ojeriza. but it's all it really is. It's a super, super heightened defense drive, which it just kicks in the moment that they see anybody. And the stronger the bond that you have with the dog, the stronger that desire to end the threat it becomes. So, I mean, they're types of dogs that just literally just try to conserve energy. When puppies, of course, they're just all over the place, just like any other puppy would be. But when they become adults, these are not dogs that are going to be jumping off the walls and, just they take off less space than a regular dog and a smaller dog would take. The Fila, as long as it grows up around animals, it's fine around animals. However, it will chase down and catch other types of predators. Let's say you have coyotes that are in the area. Pretty much anything that it sees that it's not part of the farm, it's fine with. They're even fine with other dogs as long as the other dog, like if there's strange dogs that come there, as long as the other dog is very, very submissive and doesn't try to show any type of dominance, they'll show dominance. They might even scare it away, but they won't try to actively kill it unless it's like trying to go after their livestock, things of that nature. They are they're just a really it's one of those dogs that people just really don't understand until they actually see it firsthand. But the livestock, they're fine, no problem. They walk around them like they're not even there. But they definitely could be excellent catch dogs. They don't have prey drive. Like I said, you could throw a ball and you're not gonna go crazy trying to chase it or anything like that. It's That's more like I'll say play drive, a ball drive or stuff like that. But going against other animals, things of that nature, they're definitely right on it. And these are not slow dogs, even though they're big.
Mm.
They're extremely quick. I mean, extremely quick. I was one of my friend's home one time, and he has some dogs that originated from my bloodlines, and his name is Kennels. And I remember clocking. He has a really extremely long driveway. I remember clocking his dog chasing after me in my vehicle at almost 30 miles per hour. Now, obviously, could they keep that up for a really prolonged period of time? No. But for a dog to run 30 miles per hour and being the size that they are, we're talking about a male being 140, 145 pounds. That's extremely lightning quick for a dog that size. And most dogs that size will never come anywhere near the speed or agility that these dogs have. And we're talking about agility that they are. Many of them are capable of bunny hopping a 6 foot fence. So in Brazil, there are a few people that still use them as, with cattle dogs and stuff. And they go out there with their horses and they round up the cattle with them. And they still work very, very well. But what most people do, since most people aren't, own farms like that anymore, homesteads of that sort, they're usually just livestock. I'm sorry, not livestock guardian. Estate guardians at this point.
Mm.
There are quite a few farms that still utilize CAFIB dogs for the farming and stuff like that. And that brings up another point where, let's say, where the CAFIB dogs are 145 pounds, and how far that would be a very extremely large male, by the way. It's not like an average type dog size. And there would be people say, oh, yeah, they have these big non-CAFIB dogs, and they're like, oh, yeah, this dog, uh, it was bred to do this. And I'm like, the dog is 225 pounds. Like, there's no way that a 225 pound black dog could be running around for 25 miles in the Brazilian sun. Like, you can't even picture that in your mind,
Mhm.
and think that's actually correct. So, uh, the CAFIB Fila is still bred to be functional and still be able to complete that work. But obviously, most people don't have cattle farms that have those. Most people in the states use them just as guard dogs.
Mhm. And can you talk about the official standards of K-Fit dogs and how does that compare to like the FCI standards?
Okay, so as I stated before, Palo Santos Cruz created the first FCI standard, right, which was the BKC, later on the CBKC, and that standard has changed at least three times, maybe four times. The standard changes with the dogs that are being bred instead of the dogs adhering to the standard that's there. The
Mhm.
CAFIB standard has never changed. The CAFIB standard has portions of it that shows you what to look for this mixed bred disqualifications. This is the biggest thing affecting the breed right now is just the mixed breeding. And so, we'll go look at the V-shaped lips instead of U-shaped lips. What's the signs of mixed breeding with, let's say, Neapolitan Mastiff, right? High ear sets. The ear set should be, even with where the eyes are, and with enough leather. Non-confib dogs usually have higher ear sets and much more ear leather, looking more like Tosas rather than Filas. They still retain some of the characteristics of the Fila because they still have some part of Fila. Many of them still retain the camel walk, that is part of the Fila Brasileiro standard, which is just an odd type of them walking where they move one side of their body instead of like an opposite side of the body type walk. And this helps them achieve greater efficiency when not, running full speed rather, but walking. It helps them with that. The the upward angle for the rear is a part of both standards, and both feelers usually retain that as well. You rarely see a straight back feeler from either end, but you do see saddleback feelers from the non-confib guys, and almost looks like they're maybe basset hound mixes, if that makes any sense. But and there are some real dogs with real short legs and kind of makes them look like basset hounds with their long ears and stuff like that. So there's many different um, types, but the FCI type, the FCI standard, pretty much allows for all of them. Because if it picked one specific type, then it would alienate the rest of the groups that breed the ultimate multiple different types of dogs. So they just have a very vague type of standard. This way, it would be more inclusive, and you could see it in a show. It could be three or four different types of dogs that don't even look like they belong to the same breed, but yet somehow they are, according to the standard. In Kafib, it's actually very different. You look at every single Kafib show, especially like the ones in miniature ice and stuff. These are dogs that, I mean, they all look like they could be related to each other. I mean, they look like they all came from the same litter. Even it's very very typey, very homogenous. You're not in not only type structure but in temperament and everything like that. So when the within the Kafib shows, so yes, you do the basic trotting to make sure that the dog has the proper movement. You're looking at the angulations, from the side, from the front, and so on and so forth. The judge does not come anywhere near the dog. The judge will get bit, and they do get bit, and they don't fault the dog when that happens. Dogs get disqualified if that happens at the FCI shows. So even though it states that they're supposed to be, defensive against strangers, they'll go over there and they put their hands in their dog's mouth. It's just crazy. I never seen anything like this. But they, in the Kafib shows, they have a good healthy distance away. In the United States, we use gunshots for the nervous system test. In Brazil, they don't have guns, so they use anything that could produce a loud sound. Could be anything like a loud click from a clipboard or whatever. Then comes the temperament portion of it, which is the part that everybody wants to just get down to business. And if the dog doesn't pass the nervous system and the temperament test, it's pulled. That's it. It's disqualified, which means it's not allowed to breed. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not going to breed because it can still breed as an FCI dog, right?
Mhm.
Because it still falls underneath the FCI standard. If the person is unscrupulous and they just want to breed a dog for whatever, they still have their FCI papers and they could breed a dog with whatever they want. And this is where it gets a little interesting. I'll say almost 100% of CAFIB dogs also have FCI paperwork. It's very, very difficult to get a full CAFIB pedigree. I just brought a judge over. We don't have CAFIB here in Puerto Rico. Just recently moved from the States to Puerto Rico, and I'm continuing my breeding program over here. But since we don't have CAFIB judges here, or in the States for that matter, we have to fly in judges. And you could have flown them in from, Europe or Brazil, but they have CAFIB judges, and we bring them in. And I did an analysis on my dogs. It was the first analysis I've ever done in Puerto Rico, and I'll say the first approved litters. I have 2 litters, and the first approved litters in probably the last 20 years anywhere in North America, including the Caribbean. Now, that means that those puppies will have an original registry. It doesn't go by what the FCI pedigree states. It just goes by, okay, we've seen the mother and the father and the puppy. So it'll have the name of the puppy and then just the mother and the father. It'll have nothing that follows because they don't trust the FCI paperwork for obvious reasons. And so it would have to happen to further that pedigree. I would have to bring in a CAFIB judge every single time I have a litter. And then when those puppies grow up, they still have to be approved, right? Because just because they're pure from the parent side and everything like that doesn't mean that they're worth breeding. Right? So they still have to go through the CAFIB approval. And so if they get a CAFIB approved, boom, great. Now they're allowed to breed. But again, you can't breed, okay, this dog just barely passed. Let's just say you got a regular, right? And regular is pretty below standard. For most breeders, it's going to be pretty below standard. And so you're not going to breed, like I say, a regular female with the optimum male. You know what I'm saying? Because you could find a very good female to breed with that optimum male and get much better results, right? So having a regular female, you pretty much have called her out of the program at that point because she's not going to produce something that's going to better the breed, right? So fix her, and she's a great pet. She's just not good for breeding, right? And that's it. But of course, if a dog is disqualified, CAFIB's not going to give you papers for a disqualified dog. So obviously that dog's gone from the breeding pool as well. So I mean, in order to get that full, let's say, 4-gen pet from CAFIB, you're going to have to get a lot of CAFIB approvals and do a lot of analysis and stuff until you can get that. I haven't personally. I mean, I know there's people in Brazil, but I've never been able to acquire that because it's just very difficult and time consuming to do that. But now that I'm in Puerto Rico, who knows? I might be able to actually square that away,
Right. Yeah, it does seem like it'd be quite the challenge. Can you talk about what is the ideal Fila on your yard, and what are you trying to reproduce when you breed?
So this is a good question, and everybody who has a breeding program should be able to tell you exactly what they're going after, and everybody has their own little vision of where they want their yard to go, right? Everybody has their own bloodline, and their dose differ slightly from one bloodline to another, right? And so what I've noticed is that, and this is one of the things that I see kind of fault in CAFIB, is that they really, really fixate on temperament and head type. For some reason, it's a head breed, and they really love their heads. And so while the rest of, they take into account the rest of the dog, but they put a real big emphasis on these 2 things, which is, you could tell a CAFIB apart from an FCI because of the head. It's one of the first things you see right away. That's the CAFIB to spot 1 mile away, right? Temperament, of course. Temperament is key. Without the temperament, you don't have this breed, right? This is what this breed is known for. This is what it's there. So those things obviously have to be incorporated into every breeding program. You shouldn't be breeding dogs that don't have any temperament because they wouldn't be passing CAFIB anyway, right? So you have that. What I've noticed, the biggest thing for me is the rear angulation. in the CAFIB dogs. They have very straight stifles, and because of that, they don't propel themselves forward with a lot of force, right? The angulation is correct, so they can't build muscle correctly in their thighs, right? So when I set forth to rebuild my yard over here, I went out and I go to Brazil and I go to the farms and I pick my dogs out, and of course I already test the parents myself to verify that the parents have temperament and everything else like that. And then I go over there and I choose the puppy that I want, and it's going to be based on the rear angulation at this point. Now, you're talking about these dogs are already, obviously I'm not picking a dog that's shy and has the great angulation. I'm picking the dog that's like a complete package but has the better rear angulation, right? And so going through the bloodlines and the pedigrees, I already know what's going to be producing what. And so I'm picking the best specimen for my vision, right? And how I'm going to be. And so far, it's working out great. So, and it was confirmed by the judge that we got here was not a regular judge. She was the president of CAFIB. And she came over and she asked me the same exact question, telling her exactly the same thing, breeding for the all-around dog, but with an emphasis on the rear angulation, right? And she goes, that's one of the things that I spotted about your dog. She goes, the rear angulation is very, very good compared to most of the other dogs we've seen over here and stuff like that. And that doesn't mean that, as a whole, the breed just has horrible rears. It's just that, you'll have a show, let's say, of 100 dogs in Brazil, right? The ones with the rear angulation, the best rear angulation, which is what should be the norm, they're very few and far in between. Out of that 100, you might only see 10 with great rear angulation, and that should really be the norm. You'll have out of that 100, you'll have maybe 30 or 40 of them with like stifles that are too straight. But they might get dinged on that. It's a flaw, not a big deal. You know what I'm saying? But they got that beautiful head. And look at the temperament. He's flying through the air and going crazy, killing everybody. And yeah, that's great. It's impressive. You definitely want all of that, but you can have it all, without overemphasizing on one thing. Once I get the consistently throwing good rears, then I could go ahead, just like everybody else, just start concentrating everything else until it becomes perfect for you, which is never going to happen, which is why you keep breeding and you can never stop, right? Until you get where you're at, and then you get too old to handle them and you pass it on to the next generation. Right?
Can you talk about some of the health concerns the modern dogs have, and what are you particularly concerned about on your yard?
Right. So the biggest thing when I first came into this breed about 18 years ago was bloat, right? And then second, bloat with gastric torsion, and then second would have been hip dysplasia, right? And both of them were very common, especially in certain bloodlines. I think CAFIB has been doing a really, really good job in curtailing this. So most working dogs and working bloodlines usually have way less problems than non-working bloodlines, right? Because if your dog is dysplastic and can't run at a year old, he's definitely not breeding. You're definitely not going to breed that back into your bloodline, because it's just going to destroy it, right? And it's not going to be able to work at the farm either. So it just doesn't get bred. So working dogs in general have a better health than non-working dogs, because the non-working dogs are obviously looking for more aesthetically pleasing lines and so on and so forth like that. Well, working dog people, I just want to make sure that the dogs are actually being able to work for a long period of time. Right? They don't want a dog that they spend all this money on and only working a year or 2 years. They want a dog 5, 6, 7 years. We have a dog right now. It's from one of my breedings from many years ago. This dog is 14 years old, and she's still alive and kicking. Not quite as fast as she used to be when she was 3 or 4, obviously, but and her brother in Belgium also still alive. At 14 years old. So they're very, very long-lived dogs as long as they get plenty of exercise and good food, just like any other dog breed, especially working dog breeds. You feed them, you take care of them, and they'll give you lifetime of worry-free problems. Um, so bloat, I haven't even heard of in CAFIB bloodlines in a very long time. It's still really prevalent in the non-CAFIB dogs, but that's because they're bringing in other breeds that are very, very unhealthy, like the English Mastiff, Neapolitan Mastiffs, and stuff like that. So that's always going to be an issue when whenever somebody uses mixes, they're not breeding the very best. There's always some $500 Craigslist special that they got, and do it because nobody in their right mind would breed a $5,000, let's say Neo, to mix it with a Fila. It doesn't make any sense. If you spent that money on a Neo, you're probably breeding Neos, and so on and so forth. So we do still have some hip dysplasia, uh, and a lot of people are doing OFA and pen hip in the States. And when I was in the States, I was doing it. Over here, I've only found one person to do this. However, they want to be able to take the dog from the car to the operating table without me, but yeah, it's not going to happen. I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to get one of the vets as the mobile vet that we got over here. Trying to get him to get really good at this kind of stuff. This way he could do it because he's really cool, and he'll let me, put my dog down for a little bit, and then he'll go ahead and take it from there. So the dog won't be going crazy. But they, there has been a lot of OFA done lately, especially like the fib breeders, and very great results. Very, very great results. Even though we know in Brazil they're not doing, the radiographs for the Filas and stuff like that. I know they're not doing it, but they're still working dogs. And if the dog's not walking, it's not going to pass CAFIB either. You know what I'm saying? They're going to be like, this dog is not structurally sound, and because of that, it's not going through that. And what CAFIB is doing now is at 18 months old is when you can get a full approval, right? So they want to be able to see the dog when it's an adult, and even at 18 months, still fairly young. You know what I'm saying? If you really want to show your dog off nice, especially a male over 2 years old, so he's nice and filled out and everything. But at 18 months old, they should be able to pass a CAFIB test, a CAFIB evaluation. Man, this dogs sometimes even younger than a year could technically pass it. But there's a lot of dogs that obviously don't have the confidence yet at a year old. This is a slow maturing breed. So a year old is nowhere near adults for them yet. They're still very much puppies. And it's very difficult to say that when you're looking at a dog that's a year old, that's already over 100 pounds, and it looks like an adult dog, but it has a lot more growing to do internally, and the bones widening up and everything like that, and mentally, obviously.
Mm-hmm. What is an ideal height and weight for your dogs in your program, as far as being able to do the job and be effective in all areas?
So we have to look at what your dogs are actually going to be doing, right? So if your dog's going to be chasing cattle all over the place the time, if your dogs are going to be hunting dogs that are chasing, let's say, excuse me, let me take this out. Can you still hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I didn't hear you. So, all right. So what would happen is that if you're going to be breeding dogs that's primarily going to be using them as cattle dogs, we'll probably go with a smaller, nimbler type Fila, right? And there are bloodlines like that out there that you could get. It doesn't mean that they're tiny, but understand that there's a minimum standard for females, which is 90 pounds. Now, I've never seen a 90-pound Fila before. They've always been much bigger than that. But the smallest is 90 pounds. Now, I have a 110-pound bitch over here that would run circles around most dogs, like even half her size, and she's extremely athletic. She's my smallest female over here, but she's like hell on wheels, like super super quick, super athletic. Uh, she has more prey drive than my other dogs do. Right, certain bloodlines are gonna have different types of drives in there, just like any other breed. Right. Me personally, I'm not running cattle every day. All right. My dogs are on the bigger end of the CAFIB dogs. And they're also, on the taller end of the CAFIB dogs. They're all within the standard, but they're all very well balanced. They're very long, which it should be rectangular in shape. They shouldn't be square. Nice long necks, nice long legs, and everything. These dogs, if you looked at them from afar and you didn't know how big they were, you'd automatically assume that, yeah, this dog could run forever, and they could. And even from puppies, and I may get some hate from this, but I have puppies from 5, 6, 7 months old doing 8 miles, 10 miles through the mountains, swimming through rivers with me, and just going forever. And you really want to believe that a dog that size can't do it, But the people that have them and actually do work them, they can see. I mean, there's nothing. I've never seen anything like that before. But my dogs are just on the bigger end. So my my aim is to keep my dogs at about 125 females, and my males 135, 140. There. But without losing the athleticism, I have dogs that jump over. There's a reason why my fencing is over 7 feet tall. And inside, so I have the kennels themselves, where the dogs are 12 by 12 kennels, and then if they happen to get out of that, there's like a little hallway with another fence there that they would have to go jump over without a running start. I don't think that they'd be able to. And then if they somehow manage to get over that, then they have a quarter-acre fenced in area that they would have to try to get over as well. I haven't seen them get over it, but when people come over to see them, the dogs put on a show, and you have their shoulders coming over the 7.5 foot fence, and they're just jumping so high that their shoulders actually, people are like, they're going to come over. I'm like, it's okay, don't worry about it. And it's a scary thought. It's a scary thought, especially when you're trapped in that little hallway,
Yeah.
But I've had people from non-CAFIB, even breeders, come by and see the dogs. Are like, oh my God, this is definitely completely different. I always thought it was just slight differences that it's very apparent once you see them side by side,
Right. How is the breeding process? How are the moms during whelping, and what is an average litter size?
That is just a hard question for me right now, because one of my last litters was 14 and it killed me. And they all survive. When you get a litter that size, and that's not an average size litter, that's a very, very large litter. We'll say average size litter, 6 to 10. Mothers are usually very, very good. Just watch them, especially in the first litter. They can get stupid and kind of try to like step on them or something, not on purpose, but they're gigantic, and they don't really realize that they're stepping on them because they barely feel them. They're tiny. They just look like little guinea pigs, when they're born. But they're very, very good mothers. They're very, very attentive to them. What I do try to help them out with is this: when they are giving birth, I always grab the puppy from them, cut the umbilical cord, tie it, put iodine on it, clean it all up for her. The thing is this: Fila's teeth are short and kind of blunt, right? They don't come to a super sharp edge like, let's say, a Doberman or anything like that. So when they grab these puppies, they're trying to cut the umbilical cord. They may just end up like slinging the puppy around by its umbilical cord. And what this can cause is an umbilical hernia, right? Now, this isn't a hereditary umbilical hernia, and they usually close up within the first 2 months to 3 months and stuff like that on their own. However, why go through that, So I always just cut the umbilical cord, tie it off for them, put the iodine on it, make sure that it's nice and sanitary, Um, Suck out any liquids that they may have and put it back in there. And this gives the mom, they're able to relax and concentrate on giving birth to the next pup instead of going out and trying to clean that puppy, and then all of a sudden it gets all tangled up in the umbilical. It's a mess, trust me. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, when in a litter of 14, she obviously doesn't have enough nipples or, in my opinion, enough milk. So we had to bottle feed regularly. We would give, we would bottle feed 3 times a day, all the puppies, to ensure
Mhm.
that all of them had sufficient milk. But normally you don't have to do that. I had another litter with 5, which was a godsend, and she obviously was able to take care of all those puppies herself.
And what's your personal process when you are going to select a puppy? What comes into mind with you, and what are you specifically looking for?
Right. So these are good questions. The So for me, I wait till 6 weeks to pick a pup,
Mhm.
right? But I don't pick one. Like in a litter of 14, I pick 6, right? And so I pick 6 of them, and I wait till they're at least 2.5 months old. Some of them even later, and I'll start thinning out the herd, which is funny because that's exactly what I call that litter, the herd. And so you just start weeding them out little by little, and and I tell people it doesn't mean that they're not breed quality, but for my specific program, that one just didn't cut the bill. It might be great for somebody else's program, um,
Mhm.
and and every time that you breed, you sell to other breeders, and other breeders sell to you. They're not selling you the dogs that they need to keep for their program, right? I'm buying
Right.
the dog that I need for my program. So
Right.
when somebody goes, "Oh, I want first pick," your first pick won't be anything like my first pick. I promise you. You know,
Mhm.
most people want, "Oh, I want the biggest one." Okay, go ahead. That's never my pick. I mean, it could be, but it just hasn't been. Um, so, there's different things that go into it at the 6 week mark. Obviously, we're doing noise, a lot of noise resuscitation by then. I'm trying to see which one has the strongest nerve, which ones are going to be called out to pet homes, and things of that nature. Which ones are showing more tenacity, which ones are more confident, which ones are looking for your attention more, and things of that nature. At this point, we're seeing where's the prey drive at this for this at this point, and there's not much to say. That's why I keep so many, because that could change in a week. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
The one that wasn't quite as good is now doing very good. While the one that was doing great kind of fell behind. So you just gotta keep on judging them, and then little by little, just keep weeding them out, weeding them out, until you end up with the 2 or 3 that you actually do want to keep. And
Mhm.
and I always tell people if they're getting from a breeder and they didn't specifically keep dogs, then this this if it's not even good enough for them, then why did they do the breeding? You know, is it just to sell pups, or what's the point of that? So every breeding that you're doing, you should be keeping
Mhm.
something out of it, unless something happened that really none of the dogs just came out the way you wanted, and because that could happen also.
Right.
And you just don't keep it. But and then those people end up repeating the breeding, and you're like, wait a second, it didn't produce it the first time. What makes you think it's going to produce it the second or third time? Um, but that's I mean, and I'll say that most breeders in CAFIB are like that. They'll
Mhm.
specifically do breedings so they can continue on their bloodline.
Right. And what would make a pet quality dog instead of, like, what are some of the things? Is it temperament, or is it just structure and not fitting the standard, or all the above?
Right. So I'm going to be very unpopular over here. I don't know how your viewers are. But if a dog is failing out because of temperament, it's not even fit for a pet quality home. All right, you're putting a dog that's now potentially unstable, right? And now you're putting it in a house with mom, dad, little Bobby and Susie, who will be bringing friends over, and the dog doesn't have the proper temperament of the breed. If it doesn't have the proper temperament, that means it has the improper temperament. It means it's unstable. And could that dog just snap one day and bite little Susie's friend that just came over because it never did that before? Is it a fear biter? You know what I'm saying? You definitely don't want that coming out, into the world. So, what makes a pet quality dog, and it's going to be something simple like this. I just had a dog this brindle, and it's a very very dark brindle. CAFIB doesn't like very dark brindle dogs. It was still
Right.
certified, right? The structure phenomenal, but and really really excellent drives. Had she been a lot lighter, or with fewer stripes, I would have really considered her for my program. But I know that she's going to produce dogs that are also heavily brindled and that are not going to do well in the evals and stuff like that. So let somebody else have that dog as a pet quality dog, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I had another dog, and thank God it corrected everybody. I never had this before, so I didn't. I was just like, okay, it's pet quality. It was actually my pick from my Bala breeding, and I mean, I picked this dog at 4 weeks. I was like, oh man, this is it. I mean, this dog was just over the top good. And then something happened. I don't know. Maybe he ate some kind of feces out there from rats or something. He got really really sick, and I thought he
Mm-hmm.
was gonna die. Brought him home, nursed him back to health. He was a lot smaller than his siblings. But when I noticed, he had an overbite. Right? And an overbite was slight. It was about an eighth of an inch, but it was still. Never seen it before. I'm like, I don't like this. It's gonna end up going to a pet quality home. I ended up placing him really, really nearby to somebody that I know, and the dog, once it gets its adult teeth, straightened right out. And so now he went from being pet quality to being breed quality again, and I'm really glad that I placed him nearby. But things of that nature, and you know, people were like calling me like, "Why are you just giving away a pet quality dog?" Right? Because this is for the preservation of the breed. If I'm selling you a dog, I have to give you papers and everything. I mean, I'm pretty much telling you that it's breeding quality, right? And I'm
Mm-hmm.
allowing you to breed it. If I'm putting you a pet quality, you're not getting anything. You're just getting the dog, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
I could, and we could all say, oh, you could write a contract that in 2 years you can get, neutered or fixed or whatnot. But let's be realistic. There's no way to really enforce that. It's very, very difficult to enforce that. Especially, let's say if I gave that dog to somebody in Germany, am I really going to fly from Puerto Rico to Germany to try to enforce a contract that was written in Puerto Rico? It's not going to fly. But usually you try to make the best decision, placing them with people that have the breed's best interest at heart, and or that usually have had feelers before, you know. And so, these people look, I used to breed a long time ago. I don't want it. I just want one now as to guard my house. You know, that's a perfect home. That's a perfect home because you already know all about dogs and everything like that. You're not looking to breed. You just need a dog to take care of your family. Perfect. That's exactly where
Mm-hmm.
it should be going. Um, you don't want to place them obviously with homes like, oh yeah, I have like a 2 foot fence, but I'll train it really well, and oh, but we have a lot of people over, but it'll get used to it, and no, it won't. It's just one day it's just gonna snap and kill somebody. So you want to really talk to your prospective dog owners, your puppy owners, and ideally you want somebody who has had guardian type breeds in the past, um, and understands that this is not a dog that you could take to PetSmart, and you have to put the dog away anytime somebody comes over. And you don't give them the answers. You ask them, hey, what would you do if the dog's an adult and all of a sudden your friends came over? Well, don't go to the basement right away. I'm great. Okay. What's your yard setup like? Oh, I got 6 foot fence all the way around, and it's got barbed wire all around. It's great. Nobody's gonna be sneaking in there. Things of that nature. people with overly active lifestyles. I had an active lifestyle when I had a temperament champion, and I had a very active lifestyle. But the dog was literally somebody's coming over, boom, the dog gets put away. Somebody comes over and the dog's out. Well, they're not supposed to be there. You know what I'm saying? Because otherwise the dog will be put away. And that way,
Mhm.
I say that the Fila is probably the most stable of any dog. I don't have to think if my dog's gonna. I know it for a fact it's gonna attack you. So you'll never hear a Fila person's going, "Oh, I never did that before," because you know damn well it would. So it's it's a very easy dog to own in that respect.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Let's talk about diet. What your preferred diet in your program, and what's the philosophy behind that?
All right, so and I wish I could do this now. I'm still looking up ways of doing it. Full raw. It's the way that I've had it in when I was in the States, and it was very easily obtained and very, very affordable. I used to be able to feed four adults with like $30 a month on raw. It wasn't obviously buying it from like prepackaged places or anything. You literally go to the butcher shops and be like, hey, give me all your trimmings, bones, chicken feet, liver. Liver is fairly inexpensive, and you don't have to feed them that much of it, right? It's usually about $1 a pound in the packages that I get, and you cut them as a piece of sliver a day. I had chickens. You give them the eggs whole, just crunched up in there, and they would eat it. Then when you go to the live poultry places, and this is a lot of hints for people that may be listening over there. If you go to the live poultry places and you live in a city, they usually have an ethnic area where they'll have live poultry places, and they'll also sell all kinds of meats and stuff like that. And when they butcher it, the saw that goes up and down, it creates this shavings, right, that fall to the bottom of the machine. They have to pay to get rid of that, right? We're talking about 20, 30 pounds a day that you can get for free, and
Mhm.
that's just going to one butcher shop. If you have a ton of dogs, you could go, to three or four of them and get enough food. I mean, I will go like for 2 days. I have food for a month over there, and you just get the
Mhm.
liver, you get the eggs, you get the bones from them as well. And even those shavings have bone in them with the marrow and everything because they're cutting through the bone and everything. And my dogs were the best I've ever seen anywhere with that beautiful coats, super athletic. Their poops were like non-existent. They just pooped out like little white, beigeish rabbit poops. It looks like, you know. Now it's difficult for me to get over here because there is no live poultry places. Everybody just kind of has their own chickens and their own
Right.
goats and stuff like that. So I just get whatever I can. I'm trying to go to like the supermarkets. They have their butcher shop. I'm trying to get them to finally trust me because they think I'm going to eat it myself. They're like, no, we're not allowed to sell that to you. I'm like, God, I don't want you to sell it. I want you to give it to you free because you're throwing it out anyway, And
Right. Right. Right.
so I was like, and it's one less thing that you have to pay for them to pick up. It's actually saving you money. But they're scared that I'm from the government or something, and that I'm going to rat them out because they're not allowed to sell it. And so I do that, but I also use regular dry dog food to supplement because I have no other choice right now. And the dog food that I have found right now that they're doing very, very well on, and it's a hot food, but they're doing very well, even with the puppies are, is Purina Pro Plan 3020. That's just the performance one. It's
Mhm.
purple and black bag. Um, and they're doing very, very, very well on it. And so I'll stick with that until I can actually get more raw in order to put them up on that. But so far, that's been the only dog food that I could feed them all and not have any issues. Nobody has any allergies or anything else like that, so that's good. But some dogs may have softer stools with some types of dog food and stuff like that. This dog food, all the dogs, all the puppies never had any issues. But while they're still puppies, I still feed them. I make sure that I feed them raw chicken for a whole week straight. I'll feed them raw beef for a whole week straight. I'll feed them pork for a whole week straight, chicken for a whole week straight, just to see if there's any allergies. Because if there's any allergy to chicken or anything, it'll pop up with the chicken week, for sure when they're eating raw chicken. Same thing with the pork, beef, and so on and so forth like that. So they get introduced to raw very early in life. As soon as they can start eating, they're going to start eating raw. And just to see where they're at, how they handle it, and everything else like that. And it gives them a good start.
Right. How is it different running a kennel in Puerto Rico than the States? What have been some of the ups and downs?
So, well, in the States, because I was living in the North, in New York and New Jersey, it was freezing during the winter time. And while the dogs could handle it, and they have the dog houses and they stay out there a lot of the time, but when it gets really, really cold, you got to bring them in. Um, I don't know if you actually have to, but I definitely bring them in. It's just if it gets so cold out there that their paws could stick to the floor. You know what I'm saying? It's just too much for them. So we bring them in. The same thing. New York and New Jersey get blistering hot, and so you also got to bring them in. We're talking about temperatures get 110. Never gets 110 degrees over here in Puerto Rico. Never. It'll also never get cold. But what we get a lot of over here where my kennel is at is actually in the rainforest. So we get a lot of rain. I mean, a lot of rain. It's constantly raining there. So, constantly keeping them clean. I mean, they're a pretty healthy breed. But, instead of, let's say, once a month bathing them, you're bathing them once a week. Right. Things of that nature. Make sure that they don't get any yeast build up from the humidity and everything on their skin. Make sure that the fur is always nice and loose and clean. Because they're forever just like wallowing in the mud like pigs and everything like that. So, we have birds and everything over here, and our ducks and our geese. Whenever they're not in the yard, the ducks and the geese are in the yard, and they're pooping all over the place. So you don't want them, having that all over their fur and everything inside their skin, causing problems. Yeah. But really, to me, it's just much better. The temperature is so temperate year round. You don't ever have to worry about any big changes in temperature. You could have kennels and nobody cares. Have 50 feet of kennels and nobody says anything. So it's great. Over there, somebody's always got to complain about something. So. Yeah. We don't have to worry about that over here. Everybody has dogs. Everybody has dogs in Puerto Rico, so nobody cares.
Mm-hmm. Outside of Brazil, where are some of the best CAFIB dogs coming from today? What are some of the top kennels?
So, I mean, outside of Brazil has practically 99% of all the kennels for CAFIB, but we do have a lot of kennels in Europe. You have kennels in Czech, you have kennels in the Netherlands, Slovakia. You have kennels in Costa Rica that are good. And this is how I always tell people when they say who has the best dogs. I could never recommend, let's say, a breeder as a whole, right? I would say, when you're looking for a dog, don't shop the breeder, shop the actual breeding, right? Mm-hmm. Because let's say we have some gigantic kennels over there in Brazil. Some kennels have over 60 dogs, mm-hmm. and they're capable of producing the best dogs out there, right? But not every single one of those breedings is going to produce a great dog, right? So. Mm-hmm. I may have knowledge of a guy who happens to have 2 dogs, and it's just going to end up being a great breeding. I'll recommend that person, and while the other kennel may have 10 litters on the ground, I'll be like, nah, for what you're looking for, you need this breeding over here. So I would, it's hard for me to say who's the best breeders. I mean, Kennel and Hernandez has produced a ton of great champions. They have a lot of dogs, and they're able to produce a lot of good dogs. Curaçao is another one. I believe they're in Belo Horizonte. They produce great dogs. Isidreño is in Costa Rica, produces really good dogs. Costa del Lago produces really good dogs. There's some breeders in Spain that produce really good dogs. So, it just really all depends what you're looking for, and do your research or just find somebody that you trust to guide you in that direction. If you just go up to a breeder and as a red flag should go off if you say, hey man, I'm looking for a dog, and I'm looking for a CAFIB dog. Look no further. I got all the dogs you want right here. And doesn't really go into in depth, really asking you what you're looking for. Some of my breedings are extremely, extremely drivey, and people say that they want that, but they really don't.
Right.
Most people don't want an extremely drivey dog. I've already people complain, oh my God, this dog is off the walls, it's crazy. Yeah, but you asked for an extremely drivey dog. Remember that? It's like people saying they want a Mal, and then they get one, and they're like, what the hell is this? It thinks I'm crack, right? So, you gotta really ask the person what it is they really want. Why do you want an extremely drivey dog? How's your lifestyle like? What they really want is a dog that's protected, and they're saying it. They're trying to say, okay, what drives you? Yeah, they're all protective, but you don't want a dog that can't sit still. It's a family dog, right? You want the dog to be really calm. Actually, you don't want a dog with all how to drive. You want a dog that'll go crazy the moment that they hear or see somebody. Great, that's pretty much every single one. Do you want a dog that paces back and forth like a tiger, just waiting for somebody to knock on the door, or do you want a dog to sit by your feet? And that. Now, if you want to be doing some kind of, if you want to go for your temperament championship, or you need a dog with a lot of temperament, like super, super high intense temperament, in order to, because your dogs are just, average, and you just want to add a little more temperament, yeah, you might want that, but most people, I don't want that. I don't want a dog that stresses me out just by looking at it. So my dogs, while they're rated very good, and while I'll say that my dogs are average, my average is probably much higher than somebody else's average. But I've seen some dogs that are just extreme balls to the wall, just like this poor dog. I mean, it doesn't have a moment of rest in its own mind. And say that my dogs are average, my average is probably much higher than somebody else's average. But I've seen some dogs that are just extreme balls to the wall, just like this poor dog. I mean, it doesn't have a moment of rest in its own mind.
Right.
And I don't want a dog like that. Excuse me one second. I don't want a dog like that. Just stressing me out and stressing the other dogs out. But somebody might, and if somebody does want a dog like that, every once in a while I do produce a dog like that. But for the most part, I want the even-tempered dog, the one that's going to, be chill with me until the need arises, and that doesn't make them any less protective. And trust me when I say that, it doesn't make them any less protective at all. You want a dog that can relax around your house, that's not tearing your house apart all day long, looking for somebody to kill. It's just not a dog that most people want. Only very, very few breeders would need that for their breeding program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most definitely. What advice would you give to somebody who said, listen, this breed is for me and I want to start a program, like a young breeder or somebody new to the breed that got their first pup and they're like, yeah, this is it. I really enjoy it. What are some of the some of the things that you would tell them to watch out for pitfalls that you had in your beginning and just to make them a better breeder?
All right, so I tell him to trust. I mean, you're gonna have to trust the people that you're dealing with, and if you don't trust them, don't deal with them. If you're not gonna specifically go out and hand pick your dogs, And if you don't have enough experience to do so, then put your faith in the breeder. Tell him exactly what it is that you're looking for, exactly what you're striving to produce. And he'll tell you, okay, let me see what kind of dog you have there. He'll go and review the pedigree and the bloodlines on and explain to him what he has in there and what it would produce with different lines, right? And so pretty much attach yourself to the hip to the experienced breeder, somebody that you can actually learn from and that actually wants to teach you. A lot of people are into their own secret sauce type nonsense and they don't want to help anybody, but that's not really the point of CAFIB, because if it's for the preservation of the breed, then you actually want more breeders out there, right? You want more breeders out there and you want them to, you want to ensure that they get the quality of dogs that would be able to better and preserve the breed. So yeah, I mean, just basically attach yourself to the hip, ask a million and one questions about how the how bloodlines work, what bloodlines each bloodline is known for, how tight you can breed that bloodline, and so on and so forth like that. You're gonna have to go super in that, but you're gonna need to have somebody that's experienced in order to help you and guide you into that decision.
All right. Here's a question I ask everybody just to kind of get an idea where your mindset's at. If you had all the time and money and space, what would be the second breed?
I haven't really thought about it. I do have other. I have like these Jag Terriers over here that they're really cool, but I definitely don't ever want to breed them. They're like little wild animals, but I like to admire a lot of breeds from afar,
Yeah,
but
right.
I don't want them.
Yeah.
I like a really well bred game bred pit bull terrier. I like those dogs. It's just definitely not for me now in my stage of my life. There's a lot more involved, a lot more work with them. They need constant physical attention as to keep them, in the right shape and both physically and mentally. And I always really admired those dogs. A lot of the other dogs that I was interested in, they've always just fallen short, and so I really don't like going into my friend now who's really thinking about becoming a breeder after getting her first pup from me. She breeds these border collies that are super interesting, super hard cow dogs and everything like that. They're really cool, but again, that's a lot of time needed to be spent with something like that, and I'm just like getting too old. The Filas are, they come with me, and when I want to go, when I want to relax, they're just as happy standing by my feet. So they're really my breed of choice for right now. I can't even think about a breed that I actually would want to actually breed. You know which dogs are really cool? And I think they're just really cool just because the way they look. I don't think I'd want to breed them either. It's also like those Zolo dogs, those hairless Peruvian dogs.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I've seen a lot of them that are really cool looking and everything. They look like really super cool dogs. Having to massage oils in them so they don't die from skin cancer is just like something, I need a very natural dog that can, survive pretty much anything and live off of air, and that's another thing that a lot of people are really not aware of. When I feel as adult, my dogs, if I feed them on dry food, 2 cups of food a day, and we're talking about for a 140-pound dog, 2 cups of food. And they don't eat a lot. My Jag Terriers, between three of them, they eat 4 cups of food a day, and they're 15 pounds. So they eat almost as much as a full-grown Fila eats. So it's kind of crazy. They're very I call them easy keepers. They they like live off of air somehow. I don't know how the hell they do it. I don't know and they're definitely not skinny. These dogs are possibly even a little bit overweight, and but they really don't need a lot of food. They really don't, and they just go on forever, but just like a little sniff of food. So yeah, I haven't found anything else that I'm really interested in breeding though.
Right. How do the Jags do with the Filas? Do the
I
Filas
don't
have
put
to
them
put them in their
together.
place?
Yeah, well, the Jags are, they'll just see something moving and they have to dangle off of it, and the Filas don't play that, and so and just by mistake, the Filas will just dismember one. So I just don't put them together. They
Yeah.
just and plus they weren't together when they were puppies like that. I kept them separate, and I used them. We have mongoose; it's an invasive species over here, and so we use them for hunting. Dad, they hunt another invasive species with the iguana. They love killing iguanas, and if they find a rat or a snake along the way, they'll kill that too. But they really, I don't know if anybody ever has them as an actual pet. I can't see this thing being a pet like inside the house. It's just, it's like I said, it's just constantly just running around looking for something to find to kill. It's not really a pet. It's more like a wild animal. Like a crazy squirrel or something. That just runs around trying to kill things all day long. But
Yeah. Yeah.
they're cute though. I mean, I tell you, they're small, so they're cute. You can just pick them up and like carry them anywhere. But they're not really a pet per se like that.
Right. Yeah. No, that's exactly what I've heard.
I mean, these are cool dogs. I mean, they like getting pet for like 2 seconds, and that's it. They're out.
Yeah.
Looking for the next victim.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, is there anything that you think we didn't convey, or anything else you would like to say in closing?
All right, I think I rambled on for a while on a lot of the questions. So,
No,
but
you did awesome. It's going to go over well, I'm sure.
so really, just anybody who's really interested in the breed, don't just listen to what people are saying. Literally, go see it, because a lot of people make the claims about other breeds that do that. Oh yeah, they're just like a Fila. No, I'm telling you, I've never seen this. I've been around the kind of courses people say just like Filas and nothing like them. Maybe the non-confib type Filas, but these are a completely different animal. They're extremely scary. There is nothing that you could do to call them off when they're actually actively thinking that somebody's a threat. If you do a lot, and I mean a lot of work early on in life, you should be able to have some control. But remember, these dogs instinctually want to protect you, and if they think for 1 second that you're not in control, then they're just going to go ahead and take over and eliminate that threat. So they're very, very serious dogs while also being very poodle-like at home. So, but you have to be able to see that in person and see one of them actually coming at you and understand what that is, and would you be able to stop it if anything happened. So you ask those questions and talk to your breeder, trust in your breeder, and if your breeder is telling you only his dogs and his dogs are the best, it's not the right breeder for you. May have something right for you, but not always. And usually breeders turn away more people against their own breedings than towards them. Like, nah, this dog just not going to fit your lifestyle. Maybe talk to this breeder over here. They have something that might fit more your style.
Right.